Colonel Layton, first of all, these strikes do come after what we saw were a series of attacks on U.S. interests in the region that seemed very much coordinated. What message is the United States sending here?
Well, basically, Abby, the message is don't do this, don't attack us. There were 12 attacks against bases in Iraq and 4 attacks, I believe, in Syria. So these kinds of attacks are ones that put U.S. personnel at risk. And ironically, they are bases that have been used to fight ISIS, which is also in Iran's interest to fight ISIS. They were, in essence, quasi-allies with us in a very odd way against ISIS. And this is something that they should not be doing to us at this particular point. But of course, they have a larger mission in mind on the Iranian side. They're supporting Hamas. And yes, these attacks were most certainly coordinated.
The U.S. says it has conducted airstrikes against facilities in eastern Syria that are linked to Iran. It's unclear if there were any casualties. The strikes followed a series of attacks on U.S. forces in the region in which Washington says Tehran was involved. CNN's Oren Lieberman has our details.
The U.S. carried out airstrikes in eastern Syria against 2 facilities used by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and affiliated groups in a series of attacks we've seen over the course of the past week and a half or so against U.S. forces in Iraq and Syria. The Pentagon says 2 F-16 fighter jets used precision-guided munitions to target these facilities, an ammo storage facility and a weapons storage facility. Officials say these facilities were used and assisted in this series of attacks we've seen. Since October 17th, the Pentagon says we've seen 19 attacks, drone attacks and rocket attacks against U.S. forces in these countries, resulting in more than 20 minor injuries, and 1 U.S. civilian contractor who was killed as the result of a false alarm because of a belief of another one of these attacks. Given the situation, the U.S. felt it had to respond. But the U.S. and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin were very clear in this wording, describing these as self-defense strikes that were narrowly targeted to protect U.S. forces, but also to send a message that there would be more strikes if the attacks on U.S. forces continued. I'll read you a part of Austin's statement here. First, attributing these to Iran and pinning this on Iran. Iran wants to hide its hand and deny its role in these attacks against our forces. We will not let them. If attacks by Iran's proxies against U.S. forces continue, we will not hesitate to take further necessary measures to protect our people. And then, these narrowly tailored strikes in self-defense were intended solely to protect and defend U.S. personnel in Iraq and Syria. We have already seen the U.S. bolster its force presence in the region because of a worry of escalation on the part of Iran's proxies, and that would be Hezbollah in Lebanon, as well as these Iranian proxies in Iraq and Syria. The U.S. deploying and in the process of deploying 900 troops to the region, including a THAAD air defense battery and Patriot air defense systems. And that's on top of everything we've already seen the U.S. move to the region. 2 carrier strike groups, an amphibious ready group, all as a warning to Iran to stay out of this fight. The question now, of course, did these airstrikes and these targets on facilities used by Iran's IRGC and affiliated groups, did that get the message, and has deterrence been restored, or does this continue? The U.S. trying very hard to make sure the conflict in Gaza does not spread to the wider region, even as we've seen anti-U.S. and anti-Israel protests across the Middle East. Oren Lieberman, CNN at the Pentagon.